Hi, I'm excited to be joined by the host of the upcoming Runaway Country podcast from Crooked Media.
Thank you, Molly. It's a delight to be here with you.
Well, I'm happy to have you. You're like back on the road, and
I
that's
mean, ish. I'm talking to people across the country, but
yes, but
I'm not traveling like I was for other projects I have engaged in the last year or
but
four
it
or five.
but it is like a pretty fucked up moment in the country in a way. Because so my friend in Chicago, who is working in the legislature, sent me these Instagram photos
Yeah.
last night from the Chicago Sun-Times. And she and I think she's very, very smart, and I have a lot of respect for her. She works in the governor's office. And so I'm always like, what's going on with you guys? And she's like, I can't say anything that explains more than these photos.
Yeah. So much of what's happening right now, first of all, there's so much chaos happening and it's all unfolding in parallel and also in the abstract, right? Like we talk about masked ICE agents and sometimes a video goes viral and you see some violence or you see a confrontation or we talk about, tariffs and like farmers sitting with a whole bunch of soybeans like with no market to sell it at.
Right.
But like the actual lived experience of that is so radically different and I as a journalist I always like talking to people in the center of the story, right? But I just feel like particularly at this moment, there are these visceral, deeply emotional, riveting stories that we're missing because we're not getting at like the kind of the marrow of it all. We're not talking to the people. We don't have characters. We're not thinking about the humanity of it all, right?
Right.
As all this insanity plays out, part of it is like we are digesting it all so quickly that there hasn't been, I think, like the time to do it. But my new podcast, the whole goal is to really give you characters and something, that resonates in your heart and mind to hold on
Right.
to when you think about when you read the next headline, right? And some of these people are going to be recurring. We're talking to local journalists. We're expanding our network of kind of people who are going to help report it out. It's like, it's very exciting and also daunting because it's really hard to know where to even begin. And by the way, we're not just talking to victims of Trump administration policies. We're also talking to people who are maybe they're National Guard troops stationed at a blue city or,
Right.
they're still Trump supporters in the middle of economic upheaval. But the idea is to just kind of put some real like faces with these words that we talk about a lot. And in the same way that your friend is like, nothing captures it the same way this photo does. Like I think there's a collective numbness that's set in a little bit. And
Right.
we're trying to get back to the sort of visceral understanding of what we're going through as a country.
But when you look at these photos of like these National Guard troops with these kids, like,
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen these photos, like,
Yes.
young black kid, looks like my cousin, curly hair, being like thrown on the ground
Yeah.
by this, member of the National Guard who's probably not trained for this because
Mm-mm.
Trump's paramilitary organization has been put together in like 3 months by Kristi Noem, noted dog killer Kristi Noem. Like, I just
Dog
wonder.
assassin.
Right. I wonder, like, what the thing I think a lot about is like Trump believes, at least his administration believes, these photos help him. Right. That's why they're traveling around with camera crews and lighting, etc.
Yeah.
And Pritzker, who I think is very smart, believes that if you document everything, eventually the American people will see this and be like, this is not who we are.
Yeah, and Trump's wrong to think that he has American public support on this, right? Which is why you
Right.
have, like, Joe Rogan coming out and, like, you have Marjorie Taylor Greene coming out,
Mm.
right? People see this unfolding in their communities, and it doesn't I mean, and his poll numbers on immigration are not good, right? He's
Or
very
on the economy.
right, and, like, this is not some I mean, it is a curiosity why Democrats have not felt like they can occupy the moral high ground on this more, vociferously and aggressively because people don't like this. This is not what they asked for. Although the signs at the RNC were like mass deportations now,
Right.
I do not think the American public truly comprehended or contemplated the notion that there would be, as you say, Trump's paramilitary organization led by Kristi Noem would be terrorizing communities, whether they're even there or not, right? Like, there's so much fear in Black and brown communities. My mother, who is a naturalized American citizen, has been here for 60 years, is like, I don't feel comfortable driving by myself anymore. She lives
Yeah.
in a swing district, and it's like, this is like, this isn't what we bargained for when we signed up for America, right?
No, but I think we all thought this is where this when I saw those signs, I was
Yeah.
like, "These people don't know what this is gonna
Well,
look like."
absolutely.
But we know, like, we know from history
Yes.
what happens when you deport
Eisenhower.
Mexicans. That's what I was actually thinking about. It always sweeps up the people who are citizens too.
Yes, because when you're just targeting people racially and you live in a racially diverse
Yeah.
country, you're gonna sweep up a bunch of people that are American citizens, and I think the fact that they're doing so with the imprimatur of the Supreme Court is, like, another level of nefarious, pernicious, like, distressing developments that we could talk about at another time,
We
but
call them Kavanaugh stops.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Sorry, go
Yeah.
on. Yes.
Yes, Kavanaugh stops. I
Yeah.
mean, I just yeah, I think there were and I think, the videos that you talk about are made for the Trump administration is doing with, the ride-alongs and Dr. Phil and whatever the fuck else is whatever the hell else is
It's you
going
can
on.
curse.
But that
Yes.
stuff is made for the people with the mass deportations
Right.
now sign. And the problem for Trump is those people are already fired up. They've been fired up.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
racism is worn proudly and as like a
Yeah.
badge of honor. And like
Yeah.
that's not also America. Like there
Right.
is a part of his MAGA base that is really into this, but that is not the American public writ large. And that's
Right.
where, they're in real trouble, I think, on this. In addition, I mean, but I
In
also just
addition
think
to killing the economy
what
and the
right.
tariff.
But I would also just say there is and this is where I would love to see more in terms of organization and engagement, independent of Trump. Like, we can't let this happen to our fellow citizens. Like, this just can't
Right.
be something we abide. And,
Yeah.
I think the organization there's, like, a big protest coming up this weekend, but it is a thing that you really have to keep talking about because people should be indignant about this, that it's happening in our country. Like, even setting aside whether it's gonna screw Trump or not, it's just like, we can't live in we are breaking the American social compact
Oh,
when we
yeah.
allow people who look a certain way to be targeted systematically by the government and terrorized. Like,
No,
that's what's happening.
yeah, I think you have a really good point that it's politically horrifying, but it's also morally wrong.
Yes.
And like we have to always say that because this is not just about politics. This is
No.
about like the whole game. Like this is why we get out of bed in the morning.
Well, this
It's
is why we were proud to be in this country is
good.
because
Yeah.
we were a diverse, accepting, inclusive I mean inclusive in the most traditional sense,
Right.
right?
And
Statue of Liberty style.
And the rest of the world thinks we are I mean, it's not even laughing at us now. It's like they feel bad for us. I mean, we have really beclowned ourselves in
Beclowned is such a good word.
but it's
It's
true. And
we've
yeah.
befouled ourselves. I really
Yeah.
do. I mean, I was in Hungary earlier this year,
Oh,
and
yeah.
the Hungarians living under Orban are like, "Holy
Are
shit.
you guys okay?
Are you
Yeah.
this happened way faster for you than it did
Yeah.
for us. They're
Yeah.
running this playbook in, like, the first quarter. It's a football metaphor. Can you even do that? I don't know.
No, I don't know. I don't
Who
know what that
knows?
means.
In
Yeah.
the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king.
That's
Anyway,
right.
I'm just saying, like, we talk about slide toward autocracy, like,
Right.
fascistic impulses, dictatorial impulses. This is what autocracy looks
Yeah,
like.
yeah, yeah. No, for sure. I actually believe, like, if we think about how much we've been in these rapid cycles of backlash. I love this book, Backlash by Susan Faludi, and I just
Oh,
reread it.
yes.
And she talks about like how you get progress and you get backlash, and I think what we have is different because it moves so much more quickly. But we're in like backlash to backlash to backlash. Like you have George Floyd, and then you have 10 minutes later, these people being like, Kavanaugh stops, right?
Yeah.
So, like, you have to think about race as, an important part as discrimination, as being a huge part of American life. Oh, no, you can discriminate on people because of the way they look. Like, I mean, this is wild within a couple, months. So I think it will turn back. I'm almost scared for how violently it will turn.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm working on this book, which is about the sort of radicalization of the right through the lens of the Supreme Court in the 1980s. And like,
Yeah.
what's really clear is I'm completely in complete agreement about the sine curve. It's like it's fluctuating with like much in it's fluctuating to a greater degree in a much smaller amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
But the outer boundaries in terms of what
Yes.
conservatives want to do in rewinding the clock on
Christian
racial and social
nationalism.
yeah, it is. We're back in the 1930s. Like, this is
Mm-hmm.
like post-Reconstruction, like, America that they wanna not even
Oh,
like,
yeah.
pre-civil rights. Like,
No,
this
no.
is like, this is a project that has been in the works for decades, and I just feel like the appetite for regression and, turning this country into really something unrecognizable
Yeah.
in this millennium, like, we're talking early 20th century, late 19th. Like,
No,
that's
no.
what they're looking
That's
for.
but I think the problem they're gonna have is twofold. One is I, I think the country is too big to do an authoritarian takeover. I think that what you're going to end up having is a kind of dissolving of federalism, which, by the way,
Yeah.
I'm not advocating because I think that's going to be a real fucking problem too. Like a Brexit,
Mhm.
you could see that happening. Jesse really wants us to talk about that group chat, the Politico group chat, which showed all of these like normal, quote unquote normal, all of this sort of like you work for Stefanik and so you're supposed to be normal Republicans in their 30s and 40s and 20s, but not kids, saying things like you're going to get in the gas chamber, rape
Yeah.
is hilarious,
I love Hitler.
racist, right? They're both. Turns out this crew is racist, not surprising, anti-Semitic. I've been saying, you guys, like as a Jew, I'm like, these are not our
I
this
know.
crew.
I'm old enough to remember when there were, like, swastikas and, like, stars of
Yeah.
David used in derogatory, explicitly anti-Semitic fashion in, like, 2016.
Yes.
It
So
was not long ago.
right. He may have brought peace, and I use a lot of air quotes, to the Middle East, but that crew is still very much not
Yes.
on board.
Well, when you have the phrase "I love Hitler" leaked as part of your group texts, like, I think it's like the writing's on the wall about where you stand.
Yeah.
It's not a
Yeah.
big mystery there.
Does that taint people like Stefanik, like Mike Lawler? There are swingy Republicans. I mean, they're in Biden districts, quote unquote.
Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things, Molly, where you would think explicit racism and anti-Semitism would be a real
I
problem
mean, you would think
if you were in elected office and, like, you had
it's
staffers that were engaging in it.
it's important to note we laugh to keep from crying. We're not
Yes.
laughing because this is funny.
No,
We're laughing because it's in
I
horror.
you have a vice president who's embraced the great replacement theory. I do think whenever you invoke Hitler in a positive fashion, that's a problem for you. I'm not gonna say that this is a nothing burger, but I keep hoping that there are some red lines that still exist. I mean, I think it'll be a question about ultimately, it all comes down to whether people in the GOP can stomach it or whether they can or whether they actually say this is a problem.
But so far, they've been fine with it.
I mean, at this point, the people we have to look to are the people inside the party because until and unless they do anything, it will be more outrage from all corners, but except among the sort of rank and file that prop up the entire project. And until they decide they've had enough or revolt or say this isn't okay or this isn't who we are or we can't abide this, then I feel like it's a little bit of status quo. That isn't to be defeatist. And that's not to say that it shouldn't still be talked about and highlighted as unacceptable. But, I am galled by the appetite for anti-democratic, fascist, racist, misogynist rhetoric, language, behavior that has been embraced or just tolerated by the people and the like leadership in the party. It's staggering, you know?
It's interesting to me that we find ourselves here in like there are some things that we in the normal world find disqualifying, but MAGA does not, right? Like those I love Hitler chats. They'll say they were kidding, whatever, they're young, whatever they can say. But like Epstein files, explain that to us. Because
Okay,
that they care about.
Well, right. I mean, actually, they kind of care about both, but in different ways. So,
Right.
like, the idea that Black and brown people are fundamentally somehow outside the American identity is like bedrock, foundational, conservative stuff since the fucking since forever, really,
Right,
since the
exactly.
beginning.
Yeah.
But they won't explicitly say you don't belong here, but look at what's happening, right? Like,
Right.
there's a clear sort of policy articulation of that xenophobia and racism. So
Yeah.
underneath all of that is this belief that you're not really one of us. You're not
Yeah.
us. And so people who are like live wires and go out there and say it in a group text and talk about Black folks and watermelons or Hitler, like they're the extreme end of an ideology that the GOP has already embraced and is acting upon, like
Yeah.
in real time. Okay.
Yeah.
So in that way, they actually like that's like the most extreme part of their brethren.
Right.
The
Correct.
Epstein files get to a foundational belief in MAGA world that there is the elites are a secret, that the cabal of the elites is out there to fuck over the rest of the country slash just pornographically, illegally suck the lifeblood out of the innocents, right?
Right.
And so the idea, I mean, first of all, Epstein, parts of it happen to be true, right? Very
Right.
true,
I mean,
right? Like, so, and
yeah.
we should all care about, sex trafficking and
And
victim.
these people, and by the way, the people in this, it's like Trump's friends
Yeah.
from Mar-a-Lago, and also Bill Clinton, and
Yes, and Prince Andrew and
right, and take them all down. I mean, I don't care. Like,
yeah,
Bill Richards, from
Bill
New
Richardson, yeah,
Mexico. Bill
like
Richardson, yeah.
I think they can't let that go because it's central to their worldview. That
Right.
it's about destroying institutions and the elites that run them. And it's of a piece with the large project of, like, gutting the federal bureaucracy, draining the swamp, et cetera, et cetera. And so they're not gonna let that one go in the same way that they'll sit down and shush up when, the racist texts emerge, because that's actually, like, in service of the larger project, which is
Right.
to make the country whiter.
And the larger project, like, that's how a lot of Republicans and a lot of Christians made their peace with Donald Trump, right?
I was talking to a Christian mom the other day about Trump, and it was in the context of the social safety net. And I think I think that
I'm rolling my eyes because it's so horrific. Go on, yeah.
well, but I do think the abortion thing,
Right.
and they really like that he overturned Roe.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
that is part of, and like, the one thing about pro-life is like it's a very clear ideology. Like they don't they see life as life from conception and they're unswerving about it. There's no gray
Yeah.
area, right?
Yeah.
There's actually there's no masquerading. It is what
No.
it is, right?
Yeah.
And in that way, it's a pretty clear-cut ideology. And so I think that, for example, this mom that I spoke with, that was her bright line. She was like, that is life matters above all else. And I can actually understand how, if that's
Right.
your issue, that's the guy that overturned Roe v. Wade. He's trying to get rid of mifepristone and misoprostol in some ways not. But he's going to further that agenda in the way that no one else can, at the
Right.
cost of, women's health and bodily autonomy. And
Well, then
I don't
they
need to
don't
go
care
into
about
all
that
the
stuff.
counter for that argument. But what I think is shocking to me in this moment is, as of someone who was raised Catholic, so much of Christianity is about good works, is about community,
Right.
is about
That
caring.
stuff I don't
And
hear
it's
so
like,
much about.
I get the life thing. I totally
Right.
get it. But like everything else on the agenda is so like vehemently and like just it's so in opposition to the most basic Christian foundations and ethics. And like, how do you make your peace with that dissonance?
Yeah.
How do you, but that's, I think, what's happening. Although, listen, never say never. I mean, I do think we're reaching a point where you can't ignore the brutality of the agenda, right?
Yeah.
It's really playing out in red states and blue states.
Yeah. We're gonna see, right? I mean,
Yeah, we will. I mean, if
Up-
the Supreme Court doesn't allow like a massive that doesn't rip down the rest of the Voting Rights Act, and gerrymandered House districts don't steal the election for Trump in 2026, we'll see.
Yes.
That doesn't happen.
We laugh to keep from crying. Thank you,
Sure do.
Alex.
Thank you, Molly. Thanks for having me.